I was recently working on a bid for an addition project, and there were some interesting things that caught my eye. And it reminds me that a lot of people still believe the 3-bid system is the best system. The problem I have with the 3-bid system is every contractor out there comes from a different background with a different set of knowledge base, with a different set of standards, with a different process. There's no unifying process where comparing on price is the same. It's not like going to a Ford dealership trying to buy an F-150 and you go, I pick the basic white F-150 and I can go to 3 dealerships and shop on price. It would be like going to 3 entirely different car dealerships and going, I want a truck. And shopping 3 entirely different trucks and going a top-of-the-line Ram, a bottom-of-the-line Toyota, and a middle-of-the-line Ford, and going, I've got 3 prices. Which one's the best one? Maybe the middle. It's like that because there's no standard. The building code is sometimes prescriptive and sometimes descriptive. So one of the notes here that I found interesting is basically the foundation designer noted, this is why I built it. I chose a PVR of 4. He goes, I don't have a soil report. The owner agrees that if this doesn't work, it's not my fault. And the contractor is responsible if there's a problem with the foundation. So this is where you get into conflicts where the contractor goes, I followed the engineer's plans. And the engineer goes, I told you, I don't even believe in these plans because I'm not backing them up. Now maybe the homeowner goes, whatever, that's just legal jargon and who cares? I don't mind. And they're willing to indemnify and hold harmless the builder and the engineer, and they're willing to bear the risk. But if they're not, maybe a contractor goes, okay, let's get a site-specific soil report so we understand exactly how to build this foundation and make sure it actually does hold up for a long period of time. Well, that produces 2 different budget numbers. Some contractors may not even notice this note, and they may be in trouble later if the foundation has problems. But all that comes back to affecting the homeowner at the end of the day. The homeowner is the one who's ultimately going to have to deal with these issues, whether that be good or bad. Likely bad in this case. This was another interesting. They had a note, all dimensions should be read or calculated and never. It doesn't go on to say what and never is. My guess would be and never is using the scale. A lot of times they don't like scale. They want you to use the dimensions. So that would be my guess. But again, it would be a conversation you should have with the architect because it's missing in his notes. And you really probably don't want 3 different contractors calling your architect going, what do you mean about this note? What do you mean about this note? What do you mean about this note? And the homeowner probably didn't even notice this note. They look at the plans and they probably go, this is complicated. This is why I'm hiring a contractor. This was the engineer's letter, and the reason it was interesting is because he designed the gym for a live load of 80. It's interesting because the way he laid out the floor joists, he did it with a TJI 320, and he spaced it every 12 inches, but he did it across the whole floor, not just for the gym. And later on in the video, you'll see why that may be an issue. And it also costs more money, and so it could be a potential saving spot. But again, it's a place where conversations should be had. And you can see here the TJI 360 12-inch on center, and that was across the whole floor, not just the gym. This was an interesting one where it says interior walls 2x4. And the way I would read this is it's an interior wall that's 2x4 unless it's 10 foot or greater in height. It's kind of ambiguous. It's a point where you'd want to ask the architect and maybe the engineer, did you really mean if it's greater than 10 feet, it can't be a 2x4? Because it says except. I'm not an English major, but it's a point to note. And later on in the plan, you'll notice there's some interior walls which they highlighted in yellow as 2x4 walls. So it's a conversation that needs to be had just so everybody's on the same page because it's a little ambiguous. The next point is the exterior walls are 2x4 or 2x6. This is giving the contractor the option to do one or the other. They have different implications of interior space. 2x6 walls take up more interior space, which may leave you with less space for your interior finish out, for couches, for chairs, and that may affect how your final room feels. So that's another point where 2 different people, somebody going to go, I'm going to do the 2x4 route, and somebody may go, I'm going to do the 2x6 route. And they have different reasons for those. And you have to understand which one was picked and why. And that goes back to 3 bids. You may have 3 guys who do it 3 different ways. And so you have to understand who's bidding what to really get an apples to apples comparison to know what you're really getting. This one was good because it says they must confine their activities to the work area. Nowhere in the plans does it define the work area. So then who gets to define the work area? Does the contractor define it? Does the homeowner define it? It matters because any damage outside the work area is the responsibility of the contractor. So you have to know, what if they park on the grass and break a sprinkler? Or they're putting a dumpster in the wrong spot and it scratches the driveway. Who's responsible for that? Or is that allowed? So it's just another conversation to have. And unless you're the homeowner and you've spec'd all this out and you have a conversation, again, you're hearing the word conversation a lot because there's so many moving parts. Even in simple things, this is an addition, so it's a little more complicated, but there's so many moving parts you have to define to understand what gets done. This was another one. Again, this is down to processes and procedures. Different contractors have different ideas. Basically, the point here is lighting shown as optional at the discretion of the owner. Let's say that the lighting layout may not meet building code, and it's the responsibility of the electrician to determine that. But what this could mean for the final design, if you have decorative moldings, like if you have wall panels, the plans may reflect that an electrical plug comes down right in the middle of a wall panel, and now you're going to have to make a weird trim out. And that could have been moved if somebody had the foresight to think about it. So you could have that foresight by going, I'm going to have the homeowner sign off on this, and we're going to do it that way, and the end result is what it is. Or you could have the foresight to go, okay, we're going to lay out all of our boxes, our light switches, our plugs, our ceiling fans, our can lights, and then we're going to check them against either the designer's design or the homeowner's final wishes and make sure that everything in this turns out great. And then we'll run our wires later. Those are 2 different processes, and who decides the process? Again, 3 bids, 3 different ways to do it. The homeowner likely doesn't see this note, and they're probably, either does the contractor, because it was buried pretty deep in there for me to find. But it's important to read these things and understand what they are because they affect your finished product. This was just kind of, it goes back and forth. Again, another one, installation as selected. They didn't select an installation, but on the next one, fiberglass bat as specified. Well, one place they're specifying it and one place they're selecting it. So is it selected or specified? And then who's specifying it? You've got different kinds of insulation. You've got spray foam, which is open and closed cell. You have rock wool. You have fiberglass bats. And all of these have different properties to them and different pros and cons and different costs. So you should understand what you're getting, what the pros and cons are, and why. This goes back to the TJIs. This isn't for this job. It was another job. This is a detailed mechanical plan, which the other job, the one I was bidding, did not happen to have. But you can see here it specs out sizes of this ductwork, which relates to those TJIs. It tells you where the thermostat should be. It tells you what you should expect the CFMs for a room can be, so you can measure the performance of the unit and make sure it's functioning properly. In this case, these are all run between your first and second floor. So you could have floor joists running this way, and that could be a lot of cuts you have to make to get to these locations. Or they could be running this way. Again, a lot of cuts to make. This is the second floor, and you can see these units are in the attic. The blue goes to the first floor. This is the second floor, so these aren't as big of a deal because you're running them through the attic. But what's important to note is the TJIs, and some people don't get these in advance, and they'll just go, it's a 3-ton unit. But you don't know how many tons it needs to be unless you do the calculation. There's manual D, manual S, and manual J, which tell you exactly what size air conditioner you need, furnace you need. It's based on your windows, your location, what kind of insulation you use, what the use of the room is. You'll notice here in the media room, it's a, well, you can't see it it's on this previous one. The media room is a mini split because that varies by use. You may have one person in the media room or 20 people in the media room, and you have to have a unit that can ramp up or down based on the demand. And you can see here, house was almost 8,000 square feet, and you can see this was done in 6 tons. If you called a HVAC contractor and said, I have an 8,000 square foot house, how many tons do I need? Most of them probably say 12 or 15. With that, you're shortening the life cycle of your units, you're raising your bills, all these negative things that are happening. Again, because somebody didn't take the time to plan. These plans aren't free, they cost extra. That's why they're generally not included in architect's plans. So you have to know what's going on and kind of have a plan for these things. Now, this is going back to the TGIs, which I think is important. They're basically a solid piece of, it's not wood, it's a glued together product, kind of like a chipboard. But it's very specific depending on the size and the type. In that case earlier I said a 360. Where the holes can be, what size they can be, how they can be located, where other holes can be, and if there can be other holes based on the size of the hole. Again, this is important for drilling for your water lines, drilling for your HVAC ductwork, drilling for your electrical. You have to note all this because this is what supports your house, and if someone cuts something wrong, it could be devastating to the structure. Which is why, for me, I prefer a product that's an open web truss. It can be designed specifically for your HVAC layout. And so they can move, this big section here over here if it's needed. They can adjust it for what you need, and obviously you don't cut these, so running your wires, running your electrical, plumbing, HVAC is very easy and efficient. And if you are doing something in the future, let's say you wanted to add surround sound speakers that you either didn't do or forgot about, running wires through the rest of the life of this component is very easy. And that's really how I think people should define finding a contractor, is how do they determine what products to use? They can find a product within any budget. And how do they define what product to use? What's their standard of product? And are they willing to change some things out to meet what the homeowner wants? Or are they like, no, this is what we have to deliver a quality product? So you have to have those conversations, understand why a contractor makes a choice of a product and what the goal of that product is. And is it a long-term benefit or a short-term benefit? What is the point? And a lot of traps I see homeowners get into is they choose a contractor mainly based on price. And then when they get down to the end, they go, oh, I didn't realize that was this way. That's extra. Or they go, what about this feature? And they go, oh, well, I didn't bid that. That's extra. And you end up having all these things that end up being extra because nobody took the time to sit down and walk through it all and explain it all and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And that's really what you should do, and why you can't really get 3 bids, because 3 different guys are going to bid it 3 different ways. And then you're comparing things. You're comparing potentially a Kia to an F-150 to a Lamborghini, and you don't really know what you're getting because you're like, well, it must be the same. But it's not, because so much of the building code is descriptive, and it leaves the options up to the contractor how to make the product work. And there are lots of products that meet it, but there's a lot of pros and cons with those products. And so my best advice, if you're looking for a contractor and you're not sure, you can get referrals from your friends. Go to your friends' houses 2 or 3 years later after the work's done and look how the product's holding up. Don't go when it's brand new and shiny and just finished. Look over the long term. Then when you're talking to a contractor, ask them what products they're using, how they select them, and why they select them. For example, I had a conversation recently with a homeowner, and they thought all Benjamin Moore paint was the same. They didn't realize Benjamin Moore has products that are $25 a gallon and products that are $150 a gallon. And each one of them fills a different void or different lane for what it accomplishes. And so you have to understand what it's accomplishing to know if that's the right product chosen. So I hope everyone found this informative and you get out there and figure out what you're going to remodel and start going for it, because when it's finished, Having remodel projects done is one of the best feelings in the world.